Yeah, Ray, it says it's recording. That's always a good sign. I'm joined by Ray Aspuria, and we work with Steve Corcoran with the Raiders Snake Pit. Tell people what the Snake Pit is.
Snake Pit is a great insight tool for anything related to the Raiders, whether you're looking for news on the Raiders, you're looking for opinion on the Raiders, or just general Raiders info and news. Come visit us. You've got Steve Corcoran, who's longtime beat writer. You got myself, who covered the Raiders all the way up in Humboldt County, believe it or not, during my time at the paper. And you're getting two quality journalists who are part of the bigger media news group umbrella, but we are now on our own and doing our own thing.
Right, and some halfway decent photos by me.
Oh yeah, the one thing that I enjoy the most about when I'm done crafting a piece is selecting the photographs.
Yeah,
because I'm like, oh man, look at this. This is gonna go great. Or sometimes if you want to catch a reader's eye, sometimes I'll put a player's face on there, and they're like, oh, what are they saying about this player? It'll catch their eye.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because that's one of the things I'm most proud of, creating that library and having the fun at the camp and a few games. Now, you're an interesting story. You were telling me about Humboldt County. There's Raiders fans in Humboldt County, and some people might even, where is Humboldt County? That's way north.
Humboldt County is nestled far north. We used to joke that Northern California isn't just San Francisco, the Bay Area. If you go a couple hundred miles to the north, you've got Humboldt County up there. One of the things, the biggest city, of course, is Eureka, and then you've got Arcata, and that's where Humboldt State is, where I went to school. And even though it's tucked behind the Redwood Curtain, there's a good Raider Nation presence up there. We used to joke at the paper that whenever stories were posted, that the Raider columns that I wrote, or Raider stories I wrote, were the most read or most clicked. And we used to have a tally about, okay, there's a big news story, there's like a crime or something, but Ray wrote a Raider column. Let's see the next morning which one was the most read. And more often than not, it was the Raider column.
That's interesting. And the other thing you mentioned, some of the locals had interactions with the Raiders. I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the greatest stories that I got was when I visited Crescent City to cover a high school football game. And the high school football coach was like, hey, you know that story about the Raiders when they would visit Santa Rosa and interactions they had with Hells Angels? It's like, we've got similar stories up here. In Crescent City is home to Pelican Bay, the prison. And interestingly enough, the guards would visit the bars and local pubs there. And from time to time, there'd be Raider players in there. And they would be like, what brought you all the way up to Crescent City? And they would say, we just wanted to get away from the Bay Area a little bit and explore. And if you're not familiar, Crescent City to Oakland, let's just say it's like almost 300 miles away from each other. So the Raiders are well-traveled, and the interactions in Eureka are pretty good. One of my favorite moments, of course, was covering the Humboldt State sports auction. Humboldt State would invite athletes to be guest speakers or guests, and Matt Miyoko is a Humboldt State alum, and he's able to bring in former players. We got Dwight Clark in there, but my favorite, of course, was when Tim Brown came and spoke, and I was able to interview him, and that was a fun time because I broke some journalistic ethic codes because I wore my Raider jacket during that interview.
I see. And what about this? You mentioned Crescent City. I lost my also the Pelican Bay. I'm always fast. That's the shoe. That's the max. How far is that from Crescent City?
It's really not that far. It's a couple more miles inland.
Okay.
The funny thing is, the joke is with the high school football coaches at Del Norte High School up there is you have two occupations if you live in Del Norte or Crescent City. You're a fisherman or you're a correctional facility officer. That's it.
I got you. You either choose a pension or you catch fish.
Right.
What about this? When did you first meet Steve Corcoran? Because he's been covering the Raiders probably since they came back, like 95 or 96.
Right. The funny thing about my first interaction with Steve, when I first started at the Time Standard in the early mid 2000s, I actually reached out to him because I was going to be tasked with going to a game. And I saw that, the Time Standard and the media news group Bay Area papers down there are connected. We're owned by the same company. And I figured, why not reach out to the beat writer to ask a couple quick questions? How do I get in contact with the Raiders? How does he get the games? And, he gave me the insight, contact will kiss, et cetera, et cetera. And I was able to cover some games. And then the other interesting thing was a couple weeks later, unbeknownst to me, I would be promoted from sports writer to sports editor. So I became, the point man on the sports desk, and that kind of decreased my ability to cover games. But my interactions with Steve remained the same. And then when he left the paper, I always try to stay in contact and follow his writing. And I was pleased when Snake Pit came about, because immediately I jumped on that because, his writing style and his insight are pretty sound. He's got a different style, let's put it that way, as opposed to, just A, B, and C. He gets the A, B's, and C's, but then he tells you why. And that's what I think is most impressive.
Absolutely. And also, he knows what's going on. And it's what I like when I show up, the other reporters are somewhat friendly with me, but they're scared of me. Like they're covering up their notebook. They think like I'm a spy because I'm with Cork. They see me as like a threat. I've never been a threat in my entire life. And now just by, and this is good. It makes me feel good, and what about you? You mentioned Tim Brown. Would you see your favorite Raider? Who when you were a fan, what Raiders did you root for?
As a fan, it was Tim Brown, one. The one that tops my list all time is Charles Woodson, number 24. Great man, great player. He showed, if you take care of your body, you can play as long as you want, and you can still perform. The other player that I enjoyed covering during my time was Nnamdi Asomugha. Very, very intellectual young man. He can talk about anything. You interview him about a game, and then you can ask a question about life, and he'll answer that. And I always enjoyed that.
From Harbor City, Narbonne. That's where he went to high school, and then at Cal. Yeah, I forgot. He had a solid, he was with the Raiders like 8 or 9 years, if not longer.
Yeah, had a solid career. And, I was sad to see him go when he went to Philadelphia, but that's life in the NFL, right? Even Woodson left.
I think he married a movie star.
He did. Her name eludes me. I think Kerry Washington, I think, is her name.
There you go. I can't. She was on TV. I forget what she would do. She might have been the Scandal lady. I never seen one episode of Scandal, but I'm going to say it's her, Kerry Washington. We need like an intern to fact check all these things.
Right.
But also for you, you're a family man. Tell people you have a family.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing about my family. One, as you know, I write about the Raiders and I follow the team. But the woman I married, her father, born and raised in Kansas City, and they're all Chiefs fans. So I'm living proof that a Raider fan and a Chiefs fan can coexist. We have 3 young daughters, 4 coming soon in September. So, growing family.
That's for sure. And so how excited were they? I mean, the Chiefs hadn't won anything in 50 years.
Oh, you know what? I will be perfectly honest. Watching that game, I even told my father-in-law, I said, the 49ers did their homework, but there's still one more quarter, right? The fourth quarter. And the Chiefs started coming back, and there's this built-in animosity between Chiefs and Raider fans because of the whole rivalry. But in that moment, seeing his face, I was like, this is a good thing. Even though the Chiefs, I don't want the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl because then it just elevates that pedestal the Raiders have to reach much higher. But let me tell you, when you see someone who follows a team that hasn't gotten to that point, and to see them actually win, even as a diehard, Raider guy, I will say that I was happy for him because you could see that all that anguish, especially for the first half and 3 quarters, he was downright in the dumps. And I had to remind him. I said, you guys have number 15 at quarterback, and he's pretty good.
Absolutely. Well, they had it won since what was it, Super Bowl 4 and the toss power trap and Hank Stram. I mean, right. Are you familiar with that clip on ESPN?
Right. He often will bring that up, my father-in-law. So
that was a lifetime ago. I'm trying to think. What else? I'm trying to think. With you writing, I mean, so you probably your favorite thing to write about is the Raiders.
Yeah, I enjoy writing about the Raiders for sure. My main focus, even when I first became a journalist, was to keep people informed, right? Whether it was the Raiders, whether it was Humboldt State News. I actually, the funny thing is, if it wasn't for my mom, I probably wouldn't have ended up at Humboldt State, wouldn't have started writing about the Raiders or anything. Because out of high school, with connections I had, I started writing about Ventura County crime for the Ventura County Star.
Right.
So I was out covering murders, I was out covering crime, as a 17, 18-year-old kid. And my mom was like, I'd really like you to get your degree. Yeah, I know you have a job as a reporter now. I want you to get a degree. And I asked my community college professor, I said, outside of USC, what is a journalism program you would recommend? And he said, San Francisco State or Humboldt State. And I looked at the map and I saw Humboldt was way farther than San Francisco State from Oxnard, California, where I lived at the time. So I picked Humboldt.
Yeah, no, that's it. I've lived in California my whole life. Humboldt might as well be like in Missouri. I've
Right.
never been. Maybe that's not true. I've driven to, as a kid, Crater Lake. So we went up Highway 5. All this, we would have been equal to it, but it's on the coast or.
Right. It's right on the coast, yeah.
Okay, so how, like when you go up there, what's up, Reading and all that? Where do you cut over to get to Humboldt?
If you're coming up the 5 to Reading, you can cut over. Well, there's 2 spots actually. One is the 20. Well, there's 3 actually. Let me get back. One is Highway 20 that goes through Clear Lake. You hit the 101 and you head up north there, or you take the more treacherous 36, which I don't recommend because at certain points that road loses its middle divider. Or you can take the 299 from Reading down right into Arcata, actually. That's another road that a lot of college students take. My preferred route is through the 20 because you get to go through Clear Lake, get to go through Nice and all these little towns, right? And you get to see more stuff.
There you go. You sound like you're on the tourism board. I'm trying to think.
Oh.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? I mean, maybe say something else about the snake pit.
The one thing I thoroughly enjoy about the Snake Pit and Corcoran offering me the ability to join is the fact that I can create other digital platforms of media. I can create videos, some highlight clips, which I'm looking forward to as we get further into the season, because it helps expand how people can consume Raider news, right? You can read and view the video clips that we place in there, that we create. Your photos do a great job of attracting the viewer, and the videos will do even greater. I hope that at some point we can get out to either training camp or a game, and then we can have interviews recorded and then put up on the site. That way you can hear it straight from the source. If you're on like a commute, or if you want to listen to something instead of read it, you're able to pop those headphones in, sit back and relax and consume.
There you go. And you can find it snakepit.com. And I enjoyed the conversation, Ray. Let me hit stop here, and I'll talk to you for a few minutes afterwards. This has been fantastic.